In 1872, in the heart of the American West, two weathered prospectors walked into a bank in San Francisco with a dirty leather pouch and a secret that could make them the richest men on earth. They claimed to have discovered a field somewhere in the vast, uncharted wilderness that was literally paved with diamonds, rubies, and sapphires. It was a discovery so monumental it threatened to crash the global diamond market and make the United States the wealthiest nation in the world. The nation's most powerful men, bankers, generals, and even the founder of Tiffany Co. all fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. But was it the discovery of the century, or the most audacious lie ever told? This is the story of the Great Diamond Hoax, a tale of masterful deception, blinding greed, and the one man who risked everything to expose the truth. San Francisco in the 1870s was a city built on dreams and fueled by greed. The California gold rush, just 2 decades prior, had transformed it from a sleepy outpost into a bustling metropolis, a place where fortunes could be made and lost overnight. The air was thick with the scent of opportunity, and its most powerful citizens were men who had gambled on the wilderness and won. They were always looking for the next big strike, the next gold rush that would multiply their wealth. Into this feverish atmosphere walked 2 men who seemed to have stepped right out of a frontier legend: Philip Arnold and John Slack, cousins by relation, prospectors by trade, and deeply secretive by nature. Their rough appearances and simple clothes gave no hint that they were about to weave a conspiracy that would shake the financial foundations of America. In the winter of 1871, the pair entered the lavish offices of the Bank of California, seeking an audience with a man who could make or break fortunes with a single signature: William Ralston, the bank's founder and president, a titan of Californian industry. Speaking in hushed, nervous tones, Arnold and Slack told Ralston they had discovered something in the remote mountains of Colorado that was bigger than any gold rush. Citing security fears, they refused to reveal the exact location, afraid that powerful corporations would steal their find. But they had proof. Arnold opened a dirty leather pouch and poured a handful of rough, uncut gemstones onto Ralston's polished mahogany desk. The stones glittered under the office lights. Among them were dozens of raw diamonds, along with a few rubies and sapphires. Ralston, a man who had seen his share of con artists, was intrigued but deeply skeptical. He demanded the stones be tested. Arnold and Slack, feigning reluctance, agreed, but only under one strict condition: they would not let the stones out of their sight for a single moment. The gems were taken to the city's most reputable jewelers. The experts examined them and were stunned. The verdict came back, and it was breathtaking. The stones were indeed real, and some were of exceptionally high quality. The news spread like wildfire through San Francisco's inner circle of financiers. Arnold and Slack played their parts to perfection, acting paranoid and shy. They would vanish for weeks, then reappear with even more and even better gems, driving the investors into a frenzy of speculation. They weren't just selling a mine, they were selling the ultimate American dream, a fantasy of unlimited wealth that was too tempting to resist. The biggest and smartest fish in America were about to take the bait. The hushed whispers of a secret American diamond field quickly crossed the Atlantic, reaching the financial heart of the world, London. The rumors eventually found their way to the ears of a family synonymous with unimaginable wealth and power, the Rothschilds. Baron von Rothschild, intrigued by the incredible tale, decided to act. He commissioned his own trusted mining expert in America, Henry Janin, to verify the find. This news sent a fresh wave of excitement through the San Francisco investors. If a name like Rothschild was interested, the discovery had to be monumental. Arnold and Slack, now masters of their theatrical roles, agreed with calculated reluctance to guide Janin to their secret mine. The condition was firm. For a significant portion of the journey, Janin would have to be blindfolded to protect the location's secrecy. After a long and arduous trip into the rugged wilderness of Colorado, they arrived at a remote, wind-swept mesa. Janin was allowed to prospect for a few hours. With trembling excitement, he plunged his shovel into the earth. Incredibly, with nearly every scoop, he unearthed rough diamonds, rubies, and other gems. His pouch filled quickly. He raced back to San Francisco, almost breathless with excitement, and reported to William Ralston's syndicate. "Gentlemen," he declared, "the find is authentic." That was all the confirmation they needed. Any lingering skepticism among San Francisco's elite evaporated, replaced with a full-blown diamond fever. A syndicate of America's wealthiest and most influential men was officially formed. This group included William Ralston of the Bank of California, General George S. Dodge, a celebrated Civil War hero and the chief engineer of the vast Union Pacific Railroad. And most impressively, the syndicate added the ultimate authority on gems, Charles Tiffany, the founder of the world-famous Tiffany Co. Jewelers of New York. Charles Tiffany, a man whose entire global reputation rested on his unparalleled expertise, personally took some of Arnold and Slack's stones back to his New York laboratory for testing. After a few days, his verdict arrived, and it was final. Tiffany announced that the gems were not only genuine, but of great value. He estimated the potential worth of the mine could easily surpass tens, perhaps even hundreds of millions of dollars. Now there was no holding back. The syndicate eagerly summoned Arnold and Slack for a final negotiation. The two simple prospectors were now bargaining with the titans of American industry. A deal was struck. Arnold and Slack sold all rights to their discovery to the syndicate for a staggering sum of $660,000 in cash and stocks, equivalent to over $15 million today. Philip Arnold and John Slack overnight had become fantastically wealthy men. The newly formed San Francisco and New York Mining and Commercial Company became the talk of the nation. Its stock value soared before it had even begun official operations. Newspapers from coast to coast ran sensational, exaggerated headlines about the American Kimberley, comparing it to the legendary diamond fields of South Africa. It was a moment of immense national pride. America, it seemed, was no longer just a land of gold. It was a land of diamonds, a vast treasure chest waiting to be unlocked. The entire nation was intoxicated by a collective greed. While the nation celebrated and Wall Street buzzed with excitement, one man stood apart from the collective frenzy. His name was Clarence King. At just 30 years old, King was a brilliant, ambitious, and highly respected geologist, appointed by the government to lead the U.S. Geological Survey of the 40th parallel. King knew the American West more intimately than perhaps any man alive.
He had spent the best years of his youth traversing its vast, unforgiving landscapes, climbing its treacherous mountains, and meticulously analyzing its rock strata and mineral deposits. His knowledge wasn't merely academic. It was earned through first-hand experience with the very soil that was now promising endless diamonds. When the news of the diamond field first broke, King, like everyone else, was intrigued. But as more details emerged in the newspapers, a growing unease began to prick at his scientific mind. Every sensational detail seemed to mock his years of geological experience. His first major suspicion was the geological anomaly. King knew that diamonds are formed deep within the Earth's mantle under immense pressure and heat, and are brought to the surface through specific volcanic conduits known as kimberlite pipes. In all his extensive surveying of the American West, neither he nor any other geologist had ever found a trace of such a formation in that region. So where did these diamonds come from? The second and even bigger red flag was the bizarre assortment of gems. Arnold and Slack's pouches contained diamonds, rubies, sapphires, and garnets, all supposedly found together in the same dirt. To King, this was a geological impossibility. These gems form under vastly different geological conditions and temperatures. Rubies and sapphires are varieties of corundum, found in metamorphic rocks, while diamonds are pure carbon crystallized deep in the mantle. Finding them side by side in nature was as likely to find coconuts and pine cones growing on the same tree. These scientific inconsistencies were glaring alarms that the so-called experts, blinded by the sparkle of gems and the fever of greed, had completely overlooked. Gemologists like Tiffany could verify that a stone was a real diamond, but they weren't geologists. They couldn't tell where it came from. King realized that the investors and their experts had forgotten to ask the most fundamental scientific questions. His anxiety grew when he heard that the syndicate was preparing to send its own team of engineers for a final formal inspection. King knew that these men, while competent mining engineers, were not geologists. They would likely count the gems on the ground, estimate their value, and declare the mine authentic without noticing the subtle but crucial signs of fraud. King found himself at a moral crossroads. If he remained silent and the hoax was real, the American economy could be plunged into a devastating crisis. The inevitable stock market crash would wipe out the savings of thousands of ordinary people. But if he was wrong, his career would be over. He would be publicly humiliated for daring to challenge the judgment of America's most powerful men. After much deliberation, he made a courageous decision. He would bet on science. He would trust his own hard-won knowledge over the frenzied speculation of a nation. He would set out to find the truth for himself, even if it cost him everything.
Clarence King knew he had no time to lose. The syndicate's final inspection team was likely already making preparations. If they returned and publicly declared the mine authentic, it would be too late. He had to beat them to it. In late October of 1872, as winter began to tighten its icy grip on the high country, King set out from San Francisco. He used his official position as a government surveyor as a cover, telling only a small, trusted team of his geologists the true purpose of their expedition. It was a secret, unsanctioned mission. Their challenge was immense. The exact location of the mine was the most closely guarded secret in America. King only had a vague idea based on rumors and the general direction the first engineer, Henry Janin, had reportedly taken. They were heading into the harsh, unforgiving wilderness straddling the border of Colorado and Wyoming, searching for a single tiny patch of land in a vast expanse of mountains and plains. They were, in essence, chasing a ghost.
The journey quickly became a brutal ordeal. Winter arrived earlier and more ferociously than expected. The team battled blinding blizzards, sub-zero temperatures, and treacherous ice-covered mountain terrain. Their horses struggled through deep snowdrifts, and their supplies dwindled at an alarming rate. They were completely isolated from the outside world. There were no telegraphs, no roads, no way to call for help. For weeks they searched in vain, their hopes sinking with each passing freezing day. Morale plummeted. Members of his team began to despair, believing they had been sent on a fool's errand, risking their lives for their leader's obsessive hunch. King himself was on the verge of giving up, haunted by the thought that his own overconfidence had doomed them all. Just as they were preparing to turn back, a stroke of unbelievable luck occurred. While resupplying at a remote frontier outpost, they had a chance encounter with an old acquaintance, the very same engineer, Henry Janin, who had first verified the mine for the investors. King played his cards brilliantly. Feigning friendly curiosity and admiration, he started a casual conversation with Janin. The engineer, proud of his central role in the historic discovery, boasted about his perilous journey. In his excitement, he let slip a few crucial, previously unknown details about the landmarks near the site, a specific mountain peak and the name of a nearby creek. Those few words were the key King had been searching for. With this new specific information, he could now narrow his search area dramatically. With renewed vigor and frantic energy, King and his team plunged back into the frozen wilderness for one last desperate search. Finally, on November 2nd, 1872, after weeks of relentless hardship, they found it. Perched on a remote, wind-swept mesa at an altitude of 7,600 feet, they discovered a small, pockmarked piece of land. And just as the stories had described, the ground was glittering with gems. The sight was, for a moment, breathtaking. His men let out cries of excitement. But King, the scientist, was not swayed by the sparkle. He silenced his companions. Calmly, he took out his geologist's hammer and his magnifying glass. Then he got down on his hands and knees. He began to examine the site, not with the greedy eyes of a treasure hunter, but with the cold, analytical gaze of a scientist about to uncover the truth.
Clarence King didn't need hours, he needed only minutes. Like a master detective, his trained eyes began to spot the telltale signs of fraud, one by one. The first and most obvious clue was that the ground had been salted. Dozens of small holes had been crudely punched into the earth, and the gems had been carelessly dropped into them. It was the work of an amateur trying to make a barren piece of land look naturally rich. A true geological deposit would have gems integrated into the rock, not just sitting loosely on top. The second clue was even more damning. King picked up a diamond and examined it under his magnifying glass. He saw exactly what he had feared. The diamond had a tiny, perfectly flat facet cut into its side. This was the unmistakable mark of a jeweler's tool. Uncut diamonds, straight from the earth, are rough crystals. They do not have such marks. He then found a ruby that showed similar signs of primitive cutting. These were not virgin gems from a pristine American mine. They were cheap, low-grade stones, likely purchased from the diamond-cutting districts of London or Amsterdam, the industrial cast-offs of the European gem trade. And then came the final, irrefutable proof. One of King's men, poking around an anthill, let out a cry of discovery. He had found a large diamond lying right on top of it, but next to the diamond, preserved perfectly in the damp earth, was the clear, unmistakable track of a boot heel. The gems hadn't been there for millions of years, deposited by ancient geological forces. They had been planted, likely just weeks or months before Arnold and Slack's grand discovery. The whole thing was a fraud, a brilliant, audacious, and masterfully executed hoax. Arnold and Slack had likely spent a year or two traveling to Europe, using an initial small investment to buy up thousands of dollars worth of industrial-grade uncut diamonds and other gems. Then they had traveled to this remote mesa, scattered their treasure, and concocted the story that had fooled a nation. King and his team raced back to civilization, carrying the explosive truth with them. They arrived in San Francisco on a tense November evening and went straight to the offices of the mining syndicate, interrupting the powerful men as they finalized their multi-million-dollar plans. King calmly presented his evidence. The initial reaction was denial and rage, not at the hoaxers, but at King for daring to shatter their magnificent dream. But King's scientific evidence was irrefutable. The jeweler's marks, the salted ground, the boot print, it all painted a clear, undeniable picture of a massive fraud. To confirm it, the syndicate's own head engineer was dispatched with King back to the site, where he grimly and shamefully verified every one of King's findings. The news broke, and it hit the nation like a thunderclap. The Great Diamond Hoax was exposed. The stock of the San Francisco and New York Mining and Commercial Company became worthless overnight. The powerful investors were publicly humiliated, their blinding greed laid bare for the world to see. Clarence King, the young geologist who had trusted science over speculation, was hailed as a national hero, the man who had single-handedly saved the nation from a catastrophic financial panic. And what of the masterminds, Arnold and Slack? John Slack, the quieter of the two, had already taken his $350,000 share and vanished, never to be seen again. Philip Arnold, the arrogant leader, brazenly returned to his home in Kentucky. Though sued by the syndicate, he settled out of court, returning only a fraction of his ill-gotten gains. He used the rest of his fortune to become a successful local banker, ironically living out his life as a respected member of his community, never facing true justice for his monumental deception. The Great Diamond Hoax was over, leaving behind a timeless cautionary tale of greed, lies, and the quiet, relentless power of scientific truth.
The Great Diamond Hoax is a timeless reminder of human greed, brilliant deception, and the quiet power of scientific truth. If you found this forgotten story as fascinating as we did, we invite you to support our channel. You can do so by liking this video and subscribing for more journeys into America's hidden history. Do you know more about this incredible story or have suggestions for another piece of forgotten lore? Let us know in the comments below. And finally, if you believe these stories deserve to be heard, please share this video with your friends and family so they too can learn about our incredible past.